Welcome. This is the forum for the candidates in the 2024 election for Anoka Mayor. The forum is being recorded by QCTV for multiple showings. Thank you, QCTV. Editing is only authorized for official media reporting excerpts. Edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. Meet the Candidates forums are held without a live audience, and voters' questions were submitted online for the candidates. I'm Jerry Nelson, a resident of Champlin, so I can't vote for these candidates. But I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Anoka, Blaine, Coon Rapids area, the sponsor of this forum. The League of Women Voters does not support or oppose any political parties or candidates. I'm sure these candidates care very much who you vote for, but the League of Women Voters does not. The League does hope that each of you will vote. The goal of our forums is to help citizens become informed voters. The candidates for Anoka Mayor are Joelle Alvord and Eric Skogquist. All candidates for this race were invited, and both candidates agreed to participate. Welcome to Anoka Mayor candidates Joelle Alvord and Eric Skogquist. In lieu of opening statements, we will begin with 2 questions which were provided to the candidates in advance. This will be followed by questions from the public which were submitted online in advance. Candidates will rotate answering first. We will end with closing statements from each candidate. The first 2 questions, answers are limited to 90 seconds. And Joelle Alvord will be the first respondent to the first question, which is, what is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you serve effectively?
Thank you, Jerry. Well, my slogan is, it's all about Anoka, and it is. Anoka does need new leadership, and leadership that's transparent on how our public processes work. Anoka is supposed to be a government of, for, and by the people. I am the best candidate for this position because I think we all make better decisions in the process of discussing various differences of opinions. When Anoka's current mayor decided to not seek re-election, I have been humbled and honored to have been asked by a number of Anoka's community and business leaders to step up and lead Anoka. One of those people who supports my role as your new mayor is our current mayor, Phil Rice. Mayor Rice and I have not seen eye to eye on everything, but we do agree on most everything. Anoka needs to have some things, Anoka needs to keep continuity of some things and yet pursue some enhancements. Business leaders have told me that my strengths are that I lead discussions by moving past differences in a get things done manner, by asking questions involving differing opinions, and moving to consensus amiably. I have a master's degree in business management with a human resource emphasis. I currently serve Anoka on the Economic Development Committee. I am a constant presence at the City of Anoka Council meetings. I am at the Chamber of Commerce and jail meetings as well. Thank you.
What is your motivation to run for this office, and what experience or knowledge would help you to serve effectively?
Well, first, thank you, Jerry, for the forums like this and that the League put on. They're really essential to voters to help understand who all of us are and why we're running. So just wanted to say first, thank you very much for that opportunity. I've served on the City Council for a little over 5 years, and I'm a past Park Board member. But more importantly than that, for many years, I was just a citizen in Anoka that was engaged, paying attention to things that were going on. Most citizens don't have time to get into the weeds of city government. But they want someone that they know and that they can trust to explain some of these issues and to advocate on their behalf. Anoka's really seen a renaissance, I would say, over the past decade. For those of us that have been around for a long time, there was times where things were not quite in good a shape as they were today. And I really want to keep that going. Helping the downtown remain vibrant is important. Keeping the neighborhoods strong and safe and improving is an important part. Maintaining our infrastructure, from our pipes to the parks, and our unique historic and natural assets is important to me. And also using taxpayer resources wisely. Anoka can be a vibrant and a charming city that it's really been for generations. I'm running to advocate for those issues, but also, honestly, just the day-to-day ones that may seem small to the city as a whole, but to individuals, they're super important. I spend a lot of time listening and reaching out to folks. However they really want us to communicate and to really make connections with people so that when they have an issue, they know someone they can trust to bring that up to. I do my best to bring a perspective that's missed, and I'm there for people, and I promise to be there if I'm elected your mayor.
Thank you. The next question is, Eric Skokowitz will start. What are your goals for Anoka's future?
Thank you. So first of all, to me, it's important is to restore the city to a position of financial flexibility. The city has done a lot of spending and buying of property and all sorts of great projects over the years, but it's depleted our resources. And so now it's important for us to get that back into a healthier spot. Some of that is going to sell or develop properties that we've acquired downtown in our rail village off of 4th and Grant. And the Highland Park neighborhood is another one that the city spent, now it's going to be over $10 million buying property, and nothing really has occurred there yet. So it's important for that to happen. Also, we need to adequately fund the maintenance of city infrastructure. Roads are, there's some roads and parks that are in pretty rough shape, and that needs to happen. But new projects are nice and they're important, but it's also important for us to keep the things up we have first. Also want to prioritize public safety and work with Anoka County on a mutually agreeable jail solution to upgrade their jail. Right now, I'm sure we'll get into that. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a plan that gets discussed here. But there's some issues as somebody that's lived near that for a long time. There's issues with releases and people in that area that can cause some problems. And so I think it's important that we figure that out. And also, I think just leading the city where elected officials are open, they're welcoming, and they communicate with citizens in whichever way works for them, and whether it's phone, email, visiting with me at a concert in the park, or social media. That's important to me.
Thank you. Joelle Alford, what are your goals for Anoka's future?
Well, beyond transparency, which I already spoke of, safety is paramount to me. I think safety is what attracts people to Anoka. Without a safe community, we see signs of deterioration of our economic securities, which prevents businesses from thriving. And we know how important downtown Anoka is to our businesses. Anoka is in need of a new grocer and/or market, preferably on Main Street if possible. I will be removing the ordinance I believe that the city has that kind of prevents that from happening with citizen inputs. Your tax dollars will be used wisely. Cost overruns must stop. And a non-mayoral term, as described by one of my constituents, is price control. Price control is a term used by big government to socialize the price of a product or service. Whether you need it or not, it is the price you will pay. Your choice is gone as the city has made the choice for you. Never mind the need, just pay because the city has said so. Anoka has become a city of controls. There's a lot of good things happening in Anoka, but the citizens are continuing to lose their voices. The city council is making illegal and sometimes hostile takeover of structure within the city. The balance of new and old is a push-me, pull-you relationship. A city like Ramsey or maybe Maple Grove in the developing process, while Anoka has a well-established footprint in the state, especially as that relates to the river area and the history of the town, and of course, title as Halloween capital of the world.
Thank you. Okay, the first question from the public is, I assume that Anoka is granted an abundance of money. What would be your top 3 priorities?
Of money.
You just get a
That's interesting.
Yep.
I don't know that is the case. If Anoka has been given an abundance of money, is it coming from the citizens? Is it coming from the government? I guess I'd have to look at that to find out where this money is coming from. And moreover, talk to the citizens of Anoka to see what they would like that money spent on. Is it hard-earned dollars that they've contributed, or it is tax dollars that the state has contributed to assist in the development or the restructuring or the infrastructure of Anoka? So there's a lot of facets to that question, and so a simple answer I don't think is available to me right now.
Thank you. Eric Skokowitz, assume that the Anoka is granted an abundance of money. what would be your top 3 priorities?
Well, I will say, interesting question, because I think the city of Anoka was granted an abundance of money the last few years between federal government, state, public safety money. It's been multiple millions of dollars. Some of that has gone into new park buildings. Some of it has gone into roadways. A lot of it, honestly, though, went into things that, if you recall, everybody looked at their tax bill last year. They got a pretty big property tax increase, and so a lot of that was in ongoing spending that was really used as one-time money to keep the levy down. And I think that was important, at least for a year or so, when we were in the middle of COVID and lots of things were expensive and weird, and nobody knew what was going on. But the city has depended on that type of stuff a lot. And as I kind of stated earlier, there really isn't those funds left anymore. And so we had to raise the levy last year, and I don't think that's really the greatest plan. But I think if the city was granted that, what we need to do is to fix some of these big infrastructure issues, roads, piping, and a lot of park maintenance. To me, that's what I mentioned before, and I think that's very important.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Eric, we'll start. Do you own rental property in Anoka? If so, how many? And is it residential or commercial or both?
Well, that's a pretty quick and easy one. No, I don't. I just have the only property I own in the city of Anoka is where my home is. And so that's, I think, lots of different people have different types of property. But to me, I think the house that I live in is something I invest a lot of my time and energy in. I'm doing that right now. We're putting a new front porch on the house, and I go out and I work, and that's how I get my money. So it's not off of rental property. Anoka does have a fair amount of it, and that's always a discussion about how do we get the properties we need, how do we have a variety of different kinds for people, but also not overburden our neighborhoods. And one of the things that we've had, which I think has been successful, is there's a density cap on rental, but it's only on single family in an area. So no more than 10% of a block can be single-family rentals. And that and some other things have brought the amount of rental houses down in the areas. I think maybe like 40 or so that at last I had heard. So that's successful, but I think it's an important part of our city. We just need to manage it.
Thank you. Joelle and Alford, do you own rental property in Anoka? If so, how many? And is it residential or commercial or both?
Thank you. No, I do not own any rental property in Anoka. My husband and I owned our home, and we own my brother's home, and it is not a rental. However, I have a friend that's living there that has, oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of it, but she is disabled. And my brother's home, we purchased for my brother when we moved to Minnesota in 22, back to Minnesota. I'm from Anoka originally. And he was a quadriplegic. So I set the home up to have wheelchair access, lifts installed in the ceilings to lift like a nursing home would from his bed. And I wanted the home as a family memorial to my brother, and he passed away last July. The person that lives there has Lou Gehrig's disease is what it is. And it's of concern. They pay a minor amount. It doesn't cover the cost of the property. But they do pay their own utilities, so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Joelle, do you support funding a driving range at Greenhaven Golf Course? If so, how would it be funded?
Oh, I love that question, and I love Greenhaven. That has been a memory of mine since I was a kid growing up in Anoka. And yes, I do support a driving range. If Anoka is going to continue Greenhaven Golf Course, it needs to get up to speed with what's going on with golf courses today. And a driving range, I think, is important to that. I'm not a golfer personally, but I do know, my husband is, I do know a lot of people that golf, and they have all shared with me that same interest in having a driving range to make the golf course more successful financially, because I know the golf course costs the city money right now. So this is a way for us to have profit in a golf course as opposed to expenditure. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Skogquist, do you support funding a driving range at Greenhaven Golf Course? And if so, how would it be funded?
Well, I think if the Greenhaven Golf Course is going to be something that continues, and I support having it in our community, I think it does positive things and makes a little bit of money, kind of, I would say, breaks even for the most part. Driving range is an important part of it, but I will say that doing a driving range right now, when it's been spec'd out, it's going to cost $6 to $7 million, and that's on not even counting the $2.3 million that the city council, just our last meeting, committed the city to buying another property that was 4 times the assessed value of what that property was. And so to me, it's one of these, I think the concept is great, but we're not there on how we would do that right now. And there's a lot more pressing issues, I think, in the city than spending that kind of money on the golf course. I would say that once we start getting some of these land sales, once we start doing some other things, we can talk about that. It's just today is not the right time to do that. And I think if we're going to invest in the golf course, there's some simple things like fixing some sand pits, a few other little things on trails that could make it a nice facility without, sinking in another $7 million today.
Thank you. What would be your reaction to proposals by city staff? Eric Skogquist. City staff comes up with a proposal. How do you react?
It's just this about the golf course or just in general?
Anything.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think it's important to understand what their proposal is and get some of the background behind it. I know it's kind of not specific right now, but we pay them to have their certain view of the world, whether it's community development, whether it's police, whether it's liquor stores, whether it's the golf course. And it's important for us to listen to those because there are paid experts. Does that mean we necessarily are going to do that? No. And I'll give you an example here. A few years back, the police chief said, look, we are short on staff based on the amount of calls and the amount of things we have. We need more. And he said, I need 3 more sworn officers. And so what we decided at that time was, okay, we saw your numbers, you made your case, but adding 3 officers for a city like Anoka at one time is just a lot of money. And so what we did is we split that out over 3 years, and every year we would add 1 more staff member. And so other departments have kind of looked at that as well. We're dealing with that in our public services department, making sure we're maintaining our streets and our parks and trails. So it's important to listen and to sometimes adapt those to what the city can handle.
Thank you. Joelle Alvord, what would be your reaction to proposals by city staff?
Thank you, Jerry. I'm excited to receive proposals from city staff. That's pretty much their job, right? Their ideas are important to us. They're important to help the city grow and develop. We have a marvelous city staff in the city of Anoka as far as I'm concerned. I've worked with a number of them, talked with a number of them, met with a number of them, just to learn more about how the city structure works from that side of the house, so to speak. And the staff is, in my mind, is encouraged to speak up and let us know what they're seeing, what they're hearing, and what the ideas are in the city of Anoka that can help make the city a better place for people. Safety, of course, is concerning. The police department is an expenditure. We spend a lot of money on protecting the city, but it's important. The city needs to be protected in order to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Joelle Alford, the next question. Many Anoka parks have overgrown grass and weeds, crumbling buildings, etc. What will you do to remedy this?
Well, I've talked to Lisa Lacoste about that because she's in charge of the parks and recreation in Anoka. And she said that there's supply chain issues. They have difficulty getting parts to replace. As it relates to mowing and that sort of thing that's another department. John Holmes is in that group, I believe. And he's asked for additional staff, and that's probably why. There's only so much staff to go around for so many things. That being said, with the supply chain issue, Lisa also mentioned that there are vandalism issues. There are people out there that are destroying our public property, and that's not right. People should not be doing that. Now, there's no way to kind of stop that from happening, but in order to fix or repair, we're having supply chain issues in order to accommodate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Skogquist. Many Anoka parks have overgrown grass and weeds, crumbling buildings, etc. What would you do to remedy this?
Yeah, this is not a new issue, but I would say it's really spiraled the last 5-6 years, and that's basically because it's been underfunded. I mean, it's as simple as that. We used to have funding that would go in when I was on the park board. Our liquor store profits, for example, would go into the parks department, but it was a certain percentage. After a few years where it made a fair amount of money, the city council decided, well, instead of a percentage, let's just cap it at a certain amount. And so that was the start of it, where we would just not have enough funding going in. With redoing Highway 10, the liquor store on the west side of town, was not profitable anymore, so that had to close. And there really hasn't been anything filling that gap for a number of years. As we've been expanding our parks and expanding our areas that they're responsible for, there's either hard choices that need to be made, or we need to figure out ways to get more funding in. I think there's some creative ways that aren't just raising taxes. Some of it, like I said, if you're selling property for development, they have to dedicate a certain amount of money for each project into parks, and that's a way where you can help build and do new buildings in some of these areas.
Thank you. Okay, here's what you expected. Please address the Anoka County Jail issue.
I think if you give me an hour, we can cover it. But long and short of it, the county has proposed a few years back a very large expansion of the jail, 180 beds to 540. From about a third of an acre to, I can't remember, 4 acres of the jail, and this would all be located downtown Anoka. Visualize going up 4th Avenue, and you would have a 3-block long wall of county property there. And so from the very beginning, my mentioning to any county person that would listen was, if you need Plan A, that size of a jail, you got to do it in a location B. You just can't be here. And if you need something in location A, if it's really important to have it downtown, then you need to come up with a smaller, pared down something, because this is just too much for the city of Anoka to handle. It would be detrimental for us for the long term, and right now we've been butting heads, but there are people that are willing to listen, and I'm going to keep working really hard to try to come up with those conversations, to come up with ideas, because we can't afford to allow this oversized jail in our downtown, but we can't afford to just punt it for 5 years either, because there's roads and there's other things that need to get done in that area as well.
Thank you. Joelle Alford, address
yeah.
the Anoka County Jail issue.
Thank you. The jail, the city council, I think, came up with what they call a PDC, a planned development campus, as opposed to a piecemeal design, which I think is what the county is talking about. There's nobody that I've talked to in the city of Anoka that's interested in a jail downtown Anoka. And I will mention that our Senator Jim Abler received state approval to move it from the county seat, which is Anoka, to within the county. Does not have to be downtown Anoka. And that, I think, is what the city council is working on, is trying to move it from downtown Anoka to another more desirable location for everybody concerned. There's no question that there is a need for a new jail, okay? I think everybody's made that clear, but the location of the new jail is what is at issue at this point. The city is putting up a good legal fight on location, but they're not, at this point, providing an acceptable solution or alternative to the county council. The county council is against it.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Should the residential rental housing density in Anoka be changed? If so, how? Joelle Alford.
Residential rental properties, I think Eric spoke of it earlier with regard to how many per street, per whatever. And I haven't heard any concerns about residential personally. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't some out there, but I just have not heard them. I think that people are having a hard time buying property right now. We have inflation. We have job loss. I mean, there's a lot of things happening just as a nation, and of course in the state of Minnesota itself. But to take away the opportunity to rent a property when a person can't afford to buy a property, where are we planning to put that person, I guess is the point. I think we want to ensure that we have enough available so the people that need to be renters have a place to go to that's safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Eric Skogquist, sorry. Should the residential rental housing density in Anoka be changed? If so, how?
I've thought about that, and I'll tell you, I think it's worth at least looking at. As I mentioned, the current one in place only impacts single-family homes, and so what was going on is you'd have a lot of spots in town where there were these transitionary areas between, I'll just say, maybe the older neighborhoods to maybe I'll say newer neighborhood for Anoka, 50s or 60s neighborhood or newer. There would be a lot of these types of properties, and you might get, part of it was not just that they were rental, but maybe they weren't well kept. That's been getting better as far as the maintenance goes, and the density cap has also helped so that some of these don't get overwhelmed with properties, and we have opportunities for single-family people to buy these and to live in our community, which I think is also important, and we don't want to lose that opportunity. So right now, I think it's working, but I've always kind of thought maybe it's worth looking at to see, should we have duplexes or other things involved? That really would need to be looked into a little bit more to see how that would work, because there's many blocks that have infilled with apartments and fourplexes where there's only 5 single-family houses, and it doesn't do it justice right there.
Thank you. Okay, Eric Skogquist, how can the mayor of Anoka be easily accessible and responsive to citizens, even if they do not take the time to show up in person to a city council meeting?
Well, I think it's important that you make yourself available multiple different ways. I kind of alluded to this earlier. That's one of the things I take pride on trying to do, is because, before I was elected to office, sometimes it was really hard to get a hold of people or have people respond to you or answer your questions. And so I try to put myself out there and just be open and welcoming to people. Sometimes they just say, they call me and they say, I got a hold of you because I feel comfortable. I know you listen. You put yourself out there on Facebook or in the concerts in the park or other things. And I think that's super important, because if people need to get a hold of you or want to get a hold of you, they shouldn't be intimidated to talk to their elected official, especially a city official. We're not the president, we're not a senator. It's somebody that lives in your neighborhood and does things that should hopefully benefit you. And so those are all important ways to me to be able to meet people where they are and where they're comfortable and get them answers and just help out whichever way you can.
Thank you. Joelle Alfort, how can the mayor of Anoka be easily accessible and responsive to citizens, even if they do not take the time to show up in person to a city council meeting?
Well, I would like to implement a Meet the Mayor weekly meeting. And whether that is online, whether that's on Zoom, whether that's at your apartment complex, whether that's at a park or an event, it doesn't matter to me. But I think getting out there and speaking with the people is very, very important. I am semi-retired. I have time. I have vision. I have leadership skills. I am communicative. I am transparent. I want to be out there and talk to people, and I have talked to a lot of people that have asked that same type of question. There used to be an ice cream social where the mayor would host it. I think COVID kind of caused that to go away, but that's something that we could have back again. Anoka has a lot of really fun activities, and Anoka does a great job of the concerts in the park and the Night to Unite and the different activities that are around Anoka, but the mayor position needs to be more visible in Anoka, and that's what I would like to do.
Thank you. What is your position on organized waste hauling? How will residents know they are getting the best deal? What information should voters receive to make an informed decision? Joelle Alfort first.
Thank you. That is a passion of mine, to be honest with you. I'm on the side of choice as opposed to the council making the choice. So a no vote in November would be the appropriate choice based on your yes vote in the primary. Organized hauling is a desire of the city to manage the hauling industry. The biggest concern about that for me is government overreach. The biggest concern about that for many of the residents is the fact that our streets are getting messed up, supposedly by the haulers. We know that's not true because we have HOAs that have single haulers, that streets are just as messed up. And we've never honestly done a street study just to determine why our streets are in the condition they are. So I don't think it's fair to blame any specific industry or force somebody out of business without doing the proper homework to figure out what's wrong. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or transparency is important, and I think being transparent with the citizens is important as well. Trash companies are private industries, but they're licensed to operate in the public right away, similar to an electric utility, a gas utility, all of those things. Right now, the city of Anoka, there is not a lot of transparency because I'll give you an example on my bill. I've had anywhere from $18 to $40, and depending on the month I'm looking at, and those types of things aren't transparent. They're not open. So transparency on some of that to me is important for where the city's at. The citizens are going to have a choice if they want to have an organized trash, recycling, and yard waste system or a completely open system. Today we have a hybrid where our recycling is organized, and we've managed that effectively for many years and kept the rates low, and our trash isn't. And so I think it's important for the city to understand and have a contract and pricing for the citizens to know what they're voting on. And then if people want to go with that, great. If they don't, that's fine too. And so it's important for the city to do that and to be able to be that bridge for the citizens to know what their options are. Because right now, everything in the trash industry is very clouded, it's very hidden, and that's just not acceptable for something in the public right away.
Thank you. How should household composting and yard waste be handled? Eric Skogquist.
Well, right now, we started, actually, I shouldn't say we, the city, but the Waste Reduction Recycling Board a few years ago started an organics recycling program. And so you can get a little tote from City Hall right now with kind of a starter kit and just start doing that. And then we have a dumpster available right on Garfield Street and 7th Avenue where you could bring that when it's full. That's something I do, and I'm amazed how I started, and at this point now, we go through a lot, probably 2 bags a week, and bring it up there, and my trash is very, very small. Something I wouldn't have thought about, but it's important. And so the city's been doing it. It's a way for us to keep a lot more out of the landfill, have less waste that goes into that landfill that has to get picked up on our streets. So we were just talking about organized hauling, and it's been really an effective program. So our city's Waste Reduction Recycling Board is an amazing group. They've done a lot of good work, and I appreciate the program they've started, and as that grows, I'm sure they'll find new and creative ways to make that easier for people.
Thank you. Joelle Alford, how should household composting and yard waste be handled?
Well, as mentioned, there is an option available to this community right now. But I am going to go back a little bit to the organized hauling because this is part of what is being planned, so to speak, by the city. They did a request for pricing, which is an RFP. And that is utilized by the city as like a bidding process in order to get people that might be interested in servicing the city of Anoka as a waste management hauler, etc., to provide pricing to the city. The problem with that is that 65% of the decision making done on the hauler is done based on price. So if I own a business and I'm in Chicago, which is where one of them happens to be that services the Mounds View area, I can put in an RFP, and 65% of the decision-making process by the council has to do with what price I put in there. Doesn't matter that I'm out of state. Doesn't matter that I don't service the community currently. Doesn't matter that I'm not a community member. I don't know how that benefits Anoka. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our last question before closing statements is, what efforts should Anoka consider to make the city safe for all residents and visitors? Joelle Alford.
Well, I think Anoka is very safe for all residents and visitors. I think we have problems. The police department is at every city council meeting, and they have a police discussion as to what activities happened over the last 2 weeks since they were last there. And we hear about violence, we hear about issues, we hear about many different things from the police department that show up. But the police department is responsible for taking care of that, all right? We need the police department, we need the fire department, we need the social services, the health department, et cetera, to be there to help accommodate and handle our situations. We do have homelessness in the city of Anoka, and it's evident. We have a particular person that everybody's familiar with. His name is Felix, and we have another person that's kind of his buddy that don't respect Anoka. And they have, I believe, mental health issues, and the police are unable to do anything with them. Social services has tried. They have tried to provide housing, et cetera, and they're just comfortable being on the street. So keeping Anoka safe is important because as visitors come in, if they see that kind of thing, they won't come back.
Thank you. Eric Skogquist, what efforts should Anoka consider to make the city safe for all residents and visitors?
Yeah, I think as Joelle had mentioned, it is a relatively safe city. You hear and you see things that are high profile that happen on occasion. We had some this summer in a short amount of time. There was a few different things, but overall, when we look at the crime statistics our chief puts together and regionally, things are going in the right direction. They're at multi-year lows. People that move here, they tell me all the time, they're like, this is a really safe place. So I think we're doing a great job on that. But and it is important to continue to do that. But also supporting our police, our fire folks, and providing the resources and the training they need is really important. Part of that is making sure they can handle tough situations appropriately, which I think they do a phenomenal job. I've seen incidents, I've heard incidents. They've done great. But also, they have to be out there proactively breaking down barriers while they're enforcing the rules. Our Night Unite is an example, but cops and cones, all these other things that they do to get out there to kind of take the guy from behind the wheel and behind the window to put him out in front of people is super important. And that in itself does a huge part to keep our city safe.
Thank you. We'll now go to the closing statements, and you have 1 minute for these. Eric Skogquist, you're first.
Well, thank you very much again. I really appreciate this opportunity because one thing you hear from people, unless you bump into them somewhere or you're knocking on the door or whatever, it's really hard to get information. I'm sure as Joelle's heard this as well, just information on people unless we put it out there. So thank you for being one of those kind of independent sources that's available for the citizens. I just want to say that Anoka really needs leaders that listen, that respond to people, that are out in the community, and that care what residents want. That is something I think is ultra important. All these other things are set aside. Having a visible leader that's going to be available to you and you can communicate with and help solve problems is job number one. I still also want to continue to be a voice that's out there that on certain things that sometimes don't get represented. Some neighborhoods people don't talk to. That's something that's important that we bring back into the whole fold, and we get new younger folks, different people that haven't historically been involved in city government, involved on our boards or commissions, volunteering. And it's an amazing city, and its leaders should represent all of those voices. So thank you very much again, and I look forward to being your mayor.
Thank you. Joellen Alfred, your closing statement.
Thank you. In closing, obviously, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and also I appreciate the valuable volunteer hours that went into being able to do so. Also QCTV for producing, etc. And I would also like to thank my constituents, volunteers, and donors that have helped me. I appreciate their support, and I thank you for that. Politics is new to me, and I'm no longer, and I may not know everything at this point, but I will. I'm a fast learner. I'd like to close with this, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families by Stephen Covey. First, be proactive. Influence from the inside out. Second, begin with the end in mind. Vision. Third, first things first. Family. Time. 4, think win-win. Relationships. 5, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Listen and communicate. 6, synergize, strength to everyone. And 7, sharpen the saw, mind, body, heart, and spirit. It's all about Anoka. Please vote Joelle Alvord for mayor.
The League of Women Voters thanks the candidates for speaking to voters about issues and running for the city, Anoka's mayor. Thanks viewers and those who submitted questions. Links to all the forums for all the local candidates are located at lwabcmn.org. The general election is November 5th. Early voting starts September 20th. You can vote early at Anoka City Hall or the Anoka County Elections Office. Please see the City of Anoka website for additional information. You can register to vote, update your registration, find information on voting options, and find your polling place online at mnvotes.org or the Minnesota Secretary of State website. Also look for candidate information at Vote 411. The candidates have just been invited to put answers to a few questions on Vote 411, and I encourage you both to do that. You can also register or update your registration at your polling place on Election Day. If you're interested in the League of Women Voters, visit our website at lwvaabcmn.org. Women and men of age 16 and older are welcome to join. Your vote is your voice. Make your voice heard by voting in the general election. Thank you so much.